It's that time of week. Catch up with Mike LaTulip after a big Illini game. Great atmosphere. Mike was there at the State Farm Center. We'll get into that here in a little bit, Mike. But a 77-71 loss to number 3 Purdue, who I thought looked Final Four good, especially in that second half. But what was your biggest takeaway from one of the biggest games of the Big Ten season?
Yeah, I think when you look at the just the Purdue team in general, I think that's one of, if not the best team in the country. And to have your All-American in foul trouble and out of rhythm for a lot of that game, and to have some cold shooting in the second half and then look up and still be up 66-64 with a little over 3 minutes remaining should be really encouraging. But you just kind of got to tip your cap to Purdue. I thought they had guys step up. I thought Lawyer and Smith were outstanding down the stretch. And Edie's Edie. I thought he was great as well. But I think if that team's going to achieve what they're looking to achieve this year, it's with those two guys. It's with Smith and Lawyer and those surrounding parts around Edie. And they got the best of you at the end of that game. So you tip your cap, but nothing to be discouraged about if you're an Illini fan.
Yeah, I know Illinois fans don't want to hear us just praise Purdue, but they're really good. They're a better team, Mike. Like, Zach Edey is what he is, but as you said, like, the reason I'm buying this team is because I think what they went through last year with those freshman guards, those guys are better. Lance Jones was an upgrade, and Mason Gillis continues to do what he does. Like, but Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, if those guys are on, they can win a national title.
Yeah, no question. And at halftime too, you're up and everybody's kind of walking around. I'm in the tunnel. I'm talking to some people, and it's like, God, you got to like sever the head off with these guys because they just hang around, and you give them a chance to hang around, and with different coverages that you're throwing at them. Now they have guys that step up and make shots. Like it's hard. Like Nebraska ended up beating them at Nebraska because they had to just like get up by 16, get up by 14, and not give them the room to come back. But much easier said than done. Just like the whole Zach Edey, how do you guard him? I can sit here and talk about coverages and this and that, but I'm not the one that's, trying to chest up a 7'4", 300-pound guy. It's a lot harder than it looks.
So let's talk about that. I mean, they hold the team under 80 points. And it was the number 3 team in the country. I think Purdue ended up with 1.25 points per possession in the game. They go 8 for 10. They go nuclear from 3. What did you think of the way Illinois tried to guard them and the way they executed guarding them?
I actually thought they were really good defensively. We'll show some of the film, but I thought that they really got into them early in the game. I thought they really got Edey off of his spots early in the game as well. Just some uncharacteristic misses for him. Just I thought he didn't look comfortable, and part of that is not giving him a steady diet. I thought they did a great job of mixing up coverages. They went single coverage at times. They trap from the ball side. They trap from the weak side. And with a guy like Edey, you're never really going to stop him, but you at least want him to have to process things. Right, process more than one thing where it's like, hey, you're trapping from the ball side every time, or hey, you're trapping from the weak side every time. You at least had to process what was going on, and he's a really smart player. And he made the correct reads in the second half out of those rotations. But I thought there were we'll show the film again, but like I thought there were times in that rotation out of those traps that just weren't as clean as they should have been, and it led to some of those threes and miscommunications. And that's why when you look at the teams that knock off Purdue, it's the teams that do a lot of post-trapping the whole entire year. It's Northwestern, it's Nebraska. It's those teams that are so sound with the way they zone up out of it, with the way they rotate out of it. And that's just not Illinois' game. They don't post-trap unless it's Edey or maybe one other team throughout the year. So you have to be used to those kind of things and rep those kind of things. But if it's not what you do, you're not practicing it every day. So it makes it that much more challenging to play a team like Purdue.
Mike, for the first time in 9 games, Illinois did not score 80-plus points. So besides Marcus Domask in that second half, I think he and Coleman Hawkins was the only other one to score a field goal in the final 12 minutes. Why did the offense go cold? What did Purdue do, or what did Illinois get out of?
Yeah, I think when you go back and watch it, and even being there in real time, a lot of the shots that Illinois wants to force defensively were the ones that Purdue was forcing them into during that stretch. It was really kind of like the 12 and a half minute mark to the, call it 7-minute mark, where they had that really cold stretch. And part of that, again, you're shooting floaters and pull-ups from the Big Ten logo inside the, deep in the paint, or I guess further out in the paint. And I thought Zach Edey had a lot to do with that as well, because the second he checked out, Damask is able to pivot, get under the basket and lay it in against Kaufman Wren and Cam Heide. So you had 2 blocks in that Edey stretch, one on Damask at the rim, and then one on, Coleman had a great, lured Edey out, swing it and cut to the basket. It was a great cut, gets it, and Edey kind of chases him down. That's going to happen. You're going to have cold stretches like that, and you just got to keep playing through it. And I thought they did that for the most part. And when they got down 64-58, Myers chugs a couple beers, and you get right back into it. Not only do you tie it up, you take the lead, 66-64. So seeing the fact that like they could go through those spells, and then against a team like Purdue still punch back and take the lead was encouraging. But that's going to be the nature of that offense. It's been really good for the majority of the season, with going to Marcus Damask and trying to kind of hunt matchups. And so there's going to be times where you have a 4 to 5 minute spell where it's not going to look great and it's going to look stagnant. But on the whole, I thought they were solid offensively throughout the night. It's just, it was a lower possession game. I think it was the second lowest possession game they've played all season. And that was a factor. I don't think they were accustomed to that, given how the last few months have been.
That's right. A bad night for your best player to have a bad night in Terrence Shannon Jr., one of his least efficient performances of the year, tied for his least efficient since his return with that Indiana game. What led to that? I thought Edey's presence certainly loomed large there, but you're not going to be able to beat a number 1 kind of seed probably with Terrence Shannon having that kind of game. And I think it says something about the depth, Quincy Guerrier stepping up, Marcus Damask stepping up, that you had a chance.
Yeah, I thought Terrence got off to a really good start, actually. They get a stagger to him. He comes off, he missed the shot, chases his offensive rebound, lays it in to kind of start the game. And I thought he was tremendous on Braden Smith early. I thought he made Braden look really uncomfortable and looked uncomfortable handling the ball, which that doesn't happen much for Braden Smith. And look, I think for Terrence, the foul trouble really took him out of rhythm, I thought, on both sides. And when you look at the depth of the team, like you said, that's encouraging, because there's not a lot of teams across the country where you have an All-American guy that is 3 for 11 or 3 for 13 or whatever it ended up being, and then still having a chance to knock off a team like Purdue. I think it speaks to Damask and speaks to Hawkins and Guerrier and all those guys that stepped up. But look, I think when you look at Terrence, like, you're not in the position you're in without him at this point. He's such a big part of that. And I think one thing we've probably all learned about Terrence over the years is he's very aware of performances like that. And I think he takes those personal, and he's shown time and time again that he can bounce back from those. And that's encouraging.
He was probably due one.
Yeah. Considering the torrid stretch he was on, he probably was due one. I think, some of the things for him is just, he can look tired at times, and there was a portion, around I want to say it was around like the 8 or 9 minute mark, when it was 2.5 straight minutes of really getting up and down and just continuing to challenge yourself and lock in and push through that. Because I think sometimes for Terrence, and for a lot of players, the resting that you try to do is on the defensive end sometimes. And against Purdue, when you're having to lock in on zoning up and rotations out of that, it's really hard to do that. So I don't worry about Terrence. Right? We have enough of a body of work here to know that he's going to take ownership of that and bounce back.
Looking back at this game, I wish I would ask Brad Underwood after the game about the late lineup. because Quincy Guerrier had such a good first half, Mike, especially offensively. And I did think he battled a little bit more defensively and on the glass. And he didn't really play towards the end of the game. Luke Goody played the final 11 minutes, really didn't make a big impact there. Justin Harmon didn't have a great night off the bench either, and he was in that late lineup. Did you have any issues with not having Guerrier on there? Because Brad Underwood's kind of complaining about getting loose balls, and they didn't have like one of the guys who I thought played one of his best games here recently, Quincy Guerrier on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's tough because part of the thought process is who is Edie going to guard? And whoever Edie is guarding, you have to involve in actions to get him away from the basket. So between Ty and between Quincy and between Coleman, out of those three guys, probably want Coleman being involved in the actions. His ability to kind of read out of it, make passes out of it, his ability to stretch the floor and shoot the ball. Because if you play Ty and you play Quincy, Edie's going to guard, or either of them, either Edie's going to guard one of those two guys. And part of that cold stretch that we were talking about earlier, you had Amani in there for a little bit and you had Dane in there for a little bit, and Edie just camped out.
Yep.
And it's why I think he's definitely all defensive team, and why he should be in consideration for defensive player of the year, because he has such a big impact on that end. So that's a piece of it, right? There's the offensive piece of it. But I think when you look at in totality with rebounding and with 50-50 balls, I think that's definitely an area that Ty Rodgers excels in. I know Quincy only had 2 rebounds, but I thought his intentionality on the glass was better than I think we've seen it over the past few weeks. So it's hard when you have depth like this. I just think if you're Justin Harmon and you're Luke Goody, it's got to be the mindset of like, hey, we're in the game. We're in for Quincy. We're in for Ty. We have to do everything we can to be a factor on the glass. And Harmon had 3 rebounds. I think Luke had 2. Yeah. But just continuing that mindset of, hey, I got to be engaged. I got to be ready to go. And I got to really, really chip in with the 50-50 balls and the rebounds. So it's tough, but I think part of it comes down to you got to score to win that game against Purdue, and you probably need your best offensive lineup out there, and that's Coleman at the 5, and that's Edie guarding Coleman.
Yeah, I just for this team to hit its ceiling, Mike, I feel like Quincy Guerrier has to be January, December. Quincy Guerrier, and I felt like we were starting to see that a little bit. I just like to see you ride with him at the end of games, because I just think you're at your best when Quincy is there, and we're starting to see little signs of it at least.
I agree. No, I think if this team is going to make a second weekend, make a run at a Final Four, it won't be with Quincy Guerrier as a non-factor. I think he is the guy, much like a Jacob Grandison, like those type of guys that just kind of give you that extra, I don't want to say icing on the cake, but their contributions outside of a Damask, outside of a Shannon, outside of a Hawkins are huge. And I think potentially the staff got in a rhythm of, hey, here's kind of a lineup we like late, and we sit these guys. And I think it's just continuing to assess moving forward where, hey, Quincy's 3 for 4, I think it was from 3, and look confident. And just like a lot of these college kids, man, that tends to permeate throughout your game. And I thought he looked more aggressive. I thought he defended better than we've seen him defend over the last few weeks, few months. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I think if you're gonna hit your ceiling, it's gonna be with Quincy Guerrier.
Mike, I don't want to overlook the week that Marcus Damask has just had. What he did at Wisconsin in his home state against the Badgers, and then 20 points, 12 of the final 16 points I think Illinois scored were Marcus Damask against Purdue to give them a chance in the closing minutes. I have him on my all Big Ten first team now. I can't knock him off of there. I think Braden Smith is solidifying himself in my all Big Ten first team. But what has shined most for you about Marcus Damask?
Just the killer instinct. I think in the beginning of the season, it was like he looked a little timid at times, deferential at times. And now you have a guy that knows who he is, And he gets that from, I think his teammates feed that a little bit. I mean, think about Terrence Shannon. You're talking about a potential All-American guy who's willing to say, hey, if Marcus has got it cooking, Marcus has got it cooking. And people can say like, oh, well, he's his teammate. But I'm telling you, that does not happen on every team, especially for guys that are of the caliber of Terrence Shannon. So for Marcus, I think he's become one of the toughest matchups in the league. Earlier in the season, it was like, hey, maybe you can post him on smaller guys. You can post him on anybody.
That's right.
And that was seen in the FAU game where he was posting some of those FAU guards, and I was like, oh, hey, they may have something here. And then he's posting Vlad Golden. They're big, and he's scoring. I'm like, hold on. Now it doesn't matter who the matchup is. You feel pretty comfortable with Marcus Damask going at them. So again, that is a huge benefit in March, in the tournament, in postseason play, when you feel like you have a guy, and I say guys, him and Terrence, where you have this, arguably the most electric player in transition in college basketball. And then if you want to play a half-court game, you got a guy that presents a ton of mismatches and makes you work, pivots. I mean, what's crazy about the Wisconsin game, I thought Tyler Wall did a really good job on him.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And it just didn't matter. And they were doing everything they could to take away his right hand, everything they could. And he's finishing with his left the whole game. And you're just like, I mean, he truly is. I think he's one of the most skilled players to come through Illinois in, a long, long time.
Yeah.
A long time. And then that says a lot, because there's been a lot of good players that have come through here. So I nothing but great things to say about Marcus, and what a pickup that was. And I don't think any of us anticipated him being a first team All Big Ten guy, but he has done that and some.
First 7 games of the year, 8.2 points per game. Since then, 18.2. It's
and one of those was a Marquette game that I think he had like 18 in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's even pulling the percentages, the averages up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always looking to eat better, especially when I'm out on the road like I am so much in March. But eating better has never been easier with Factor's delicious ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart and Keto, but my favorite is the Protein Plus. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. The great part about Factor, these are 2-minute meals. Fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant quality meals. They're ready to heat and eat wherever you go. So whether it's pancakes, smoothies, more, you can discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. And you can be flexible with your schedule with these meals. You can get as much or as little as you need by choosing your meals every week. Plus, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. So you can sign up and save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. So head to factormeals.com/Illini50 and use code Illini50 to get 50% off. That's code Illini50 at factormeals.com/Illini50 to get 50% off. All right, Mike, Illinois doesn't get a marquee win this season, that quad 1A win. They certainly showed against Tennessee, against Marquette, against Purdue, that they can compete with some of the best teams in the country. I guess the Wisconsin one is a quad 1A win. But those elite of the elite teams, those top 10 teams, they aren't able to win, but they do compete. What have you seen from those games? What do they need to do to be able to win one of those games if they're able to get to the second weekend?
Yeah, you mentioned competing. Like that's what you want to see in those games. Is say let's be competitive. If you're competitive, you give yourself a chance to win it, to win those games. And when you look at Marquette earlier in the season, that was your third game of the season against a team that returned basically everybody from a Big East champion. And you were toe to toe with them. It was a 4-point game with under a minute left. And even in that game, your 8 assists, 15 turnovers, Coleman's on a bad leg. There was a lot going on there, and you still fought and you competed. Tennessee, I thought same thing. You're up at half. You're You were 9 for 36 from three. It was a really tough environment. That's a team that's probably going to end up being a 1 seed when it's all said and done here. And you went into a really tough environment and almost were able to almost pull out a win. Now they pulled away late there and kept that in like the 8 to 12 range. But just look at the contrast from last year. Last year, they had a horrible trend of getting smacked in the mouth to start every single game and digging themselves out of it. I mean, think about Northwestern, think about Michigan at home, all these games where you're having to like Purdue on the road last year. It's, you get smacked. Yeah. Like you get smacked and you have to do this whole comeback thing. And there's no surprise that you get in the NCAA tournament, you play Arkansas and you're down 8-2, you're down 21-10, you're down 32-18. And when you get to March, man, if you're the team that's consistently punched in the mouth to start, like that is a pressure cooker environment. And it's a heightened sense of tension. And so you don't do yourself any favors if you're the team that does that. And with Illinois this year, outside of the game at Mackey, where I thought they got punched in the mouth to start that game, they punched back pretty quickly. And I think they were able to cut that to 24-21 in the first half. But I just see a trend of, not being outmatched to start games, being in tune with the scout, because that was the problem last year. I thought a lot of scouting report issues. You had a younger team, and that was on display. And it showed itself in March as well against Penn State. It showed itself against Arkansas. And I feel much more comfortable, despite the resume with this team, that you got one of the best offenses in the country. I think the defense is at least trending in a better direction than it was when you looked like maybe mid-February. And all those are positive signs. So despite the resume, I don't have any qualms about this team and what they can accomplish. I think it's all still right there in front of them.
Well, Illinois clinches the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament with Michigan State winning a very different looking game that we saw in Champaign on the other day with Illinois and Purdue. Is they beat Northwestern 53-49. So the Iowa game on Sunday has no impact on the Big Ten standing for Illinois or the Big Ten tournament seeding, but it means everything for Iowa here, Mike, is they're fighting for their NCAA tournament life square on the bubble. If they beat Illinois, I bet they will be in. So what kind of test is this from the Illinois side when you have that desperation on the road, you're heading into the postseason, you haven't lost back-to-back games all season long, and this obviously has the potential to be that. What do you want to see in Iowa City from Illinois?
Well, I know Iowa will be juiced. They'll be juiced. I think Patrick McCaffrey called out their fan base yesterday.
Good.
Said that the crowds haven't been great. So maybe they come out and try to prove them wrong. I expect that place to be loud. I think it's one of the more underrated places in the conference when that thing gets going. I mean, it's a hole dug in the ground. It's a bowl. It gets really, really loud in there. And it's another opportunity for a quad 1 win for Illinois on the road. And I actually love the fact it's on the road. And for the same reason that I mentioned for the NCAA tournament a little bit, when you are playing a team at their place that has everything on the line, if you can punch them in the mouth, it gets tight and you can feel it. I mean, you've felt it at Illinois home games sometimes when there's like a big game and things aren't going well. It's like this palpable feeling that as a home team, it's like, I'd almost rather be on the road where it's us against the world mentality. And there's like a different psychology there. But you got like this Iowa team, I just don't think they can guard you. It's just not a good matchup for them defensively. So, you've been trending in the right direction, I think, defensively for your unit. And that has to continue. You have to be able to fight over ball screens and square your guy. Like that is the name of the game against Iowa. It is these middle ball screens with whether it's with Dix or with Perkins. If you can fight over the top and square back up, you don't put as much pressure on Coleman Hawkins in drop. You don't put as much pressure on Dane Danger in drop. And then Terrence Shannon and Marcus Damask, it's got to be the same type of focus that it was when they came in to Champaign on the 24th. I thought Damask was outstanding on Sanford.
Yep.
I thought Shannon did an unbelievable job on Tony Perkins, and that has to continue. And I know it's tough. You're going to be at their place, but I also don't ascribe to the mentality of like, oh, they need this game and they're just going to go and win. I mean, we went into Mackey my junior year. We had 19 wins, and if we won at Mackey, we were into the NCAA tournament. We go up 15-2. Everyone's feeling good, and then they just smacked us. Mm-hmm. So whether or not it's their resume or their tourney hopes on the line, whatever, it's mentality. It's coming in there and just saying, we don't care what you have at stake. Yep. You got to go through us, and you got to play that physicality. And you certainly can't get punked on the glass by a freshman for 4 offensive rebounds like Owen Freeman did. So I think all that's going to be on the mind of these Illini.
Before we wrap up here, Mike, I just want to ask you about the atmosphere in that building on Tuesday at State Farm Center was special. I mean, you saw the celebrities come out, including Mike LaTulip, Myers Leonard crushing beers, Sidney Brown, Nick Hardy, Nick Allegretti with the Super Bowl rings, Kendall Gill was in it. Like it was just a really special environment. And I'm thinking of like the last home games of the last few years. I mean, Illinois beats Iowa to win the Big Ten, and 3 years before that, Illinois beats Luka Garza in Iowa, right? Like there's just State Farm Center, Assembly Hall for a lot of people has just gotten back to what it should be. And I don't think we should overlook how special that is and credit Brad Underwood, his players, his coaches, and Josh Whitman and everybody for bringing that back, because it is special when you get to be in that building for those kind of games.
The vibe felt different before that game. And there's been great crowds all year, but extra police presence and who you heard was coming to the game, and just I'm walking into the arena. I'm coming over from Houlihan's from the I Hotel, and I'm walking over and I'm wrapping around the building to go into the media entrance, and the students are just fired up. There's a line basically wrapping all the way around the State Farm Center. And you can tell that it's back to meaning something. It's always going to mean something to the alumni and the people that went there and the people that go to the games. But when you get full buy-in from the students, that changes a lot, because you start getting the students camping out. You start getting everyone fired up. And I think we knew going into this game that it was going to be a little bit different, just because of the discourse over social media with Purdue, which, by the way, if I'm pardon my language here, but if I have to see one more thread with a screenshot of the NCAA rulebook for stuff, I'm gonna lose my shit, Jeremy.
Are we talking about Edie stuff?
You name it. It's like I saw a full thread on, well, his hand is actually a part of the ball, and on this block, and it's like, well, you didn't see 6A Appendix D, and I'm just like, over the 3 seconds or whatever it is. I mean, I get it. I'm sure it's fun for people, but
here's my thing with Edie. Like, he's 7'4" compared to 7 foot. Every other fan base was doing the same stuff when Kofi was here. Like, they're so frustrated with how do we stop this guy that they're trying to find like justification of thinking this guy isn't good. He's just big. Zach Edey's really good. Like, yes, he's huge, but he's also really, really good. It's a great Purdue team, man.
Yeah, and there's a reason why there was, and I'm sitting there before the game, and then as the game starts, I was looking over at some people I was sitting by. I was like, this is as loud as I've heard it in a long, long time. I mean, I was there for 4 years, and we had a lot of really good environments. I think about Indiana coming to town when they were the number 1 team in the country, but it was different. We were 2-7 in Big Ten at the time, and it was just, I think we had lost 4 or 5 straight, and that place got really loud towards the end when we made a run, but not from the jump like it was in this game, where you could tell everybody in that arena knew how important that game was, even though, you still needed some things to happen in the Big Ten race. I think it was just, forget the Big Ten race. I mean, this is one you just want to win for a bunch of other reasons.
Yeah, and I think you wanted the eye test, but like, the Arizona game a couple years ago, that's why I like that Brad's doing these home and homes. The Marquette game, like, I just thought there was just a difference there, and obviously the Iowa games have been that way. But here's the thing: I don't mind Illinois fans being fans and going after Edey and all that stuff, is because it means Illinois matters, man. Like, the fact that Purdue fans or Indiana fans or Wisconsin fans are going back and forth, the Illinois fans on social media. Like before, they wouldn't give you the time of the day, and they'll come back with the NCAA tournament not having success there. But Illinois and
They
Purdue,
both will. They'll both do it. It's like, well, you haven't made a second weekend. Well, you just lost to FDU, and it's just
that's what's great about the Big Ten, man. That's
these
rivalries.
They care. I mean, I think there are a lot of fan bases that I think are getting rejuvenated too. Like I think you're starting to see that Nebraska.
Oh,
we already know what they are for football when they're rolling, but a lot of those fans care about basketball as well, and you start to see that, and it's across the board. And you're right. Like I was speaking more so just for like the rule book stuff. It's just those calls they end up being subjective, just like foul calls are, just like travels are, all that stuff. So it's going to be hard to be perfect in the moment like that.
And I did think Edie had a foul or two that I was like, I don't know if that was a foul. The one on Coleman, maybe you could have called. Like it's a bang bang play, but some of those, same thing with Kofi. I do want to ask you, Mike Woodson coming back at Indiana. Sounds like Juwan Howard could come back at Michigan. Two of the most disappointing seasons in the Big Ten. Ohio State, obviously an open job, a lot of Dusty May smoke there. So it's interesting. Indiana will not be getting their former manager, who's one of the better mid-major coaches. Just what do you think about that disappointment for Indiana and Michigan and potentially staying put there?
Well, I was kind of always of the mindset that Woodson was going to get another year just because former player, NCAA tournaments his first 2 years. So I thought he was going to get a courtesy year just to see if this year becomes a trend or is more of an aberration.
Yeah.
And I think with Indiana, and of course, when the seat felt like it was the hottest, they all of a sudden won, I think 3 straight now, right?
That's right. Makes it easy. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so the Dusty May thing is interesting because I think on the one hand, everybody, I do think Indiana is one of the best jobs in the conference. But the reason why I think Ohio State is also up there is because, man, if you're Dusty May, you are going to Indiana, like you better win and you better win immediately. Or we've seen that they'll try to, just like Mike Woodson, you go to 2 NCAA tournaments and year 3, they're running you out of town.
It's a fishbowl, right? Like
complete fishbowl. And I think there's something to be said about a school like Ohio State where you could say the main focus is football. And I think that gives you a little bit of leeway. And there's maybe not as much pressure and you still have good resources. Everybody talks about NIL, and I'm always of the mindset of, don't tell me what the NIL situation is like when Holtman's 13th in the conference. Mm-hmm. Like, don't tell me what the NIL situation is like when, Woodson is not winning as many games as he could. Like, they go and hire a new coach. Ohio State goes and hires Dusty May. You bet your bottom dollar they're going to get an influx of NIL. That's just how that works. It's excitement. It's, hey, here's our plan, and so that's how those things can change. But with Juwan, I don't know. I think you phased out of that kind of Elite Eight, Sweet 16 era with some of Beeline's guys, and now it was a disappointing year. I think now
one of the worst years I think in their program's history. 8-22, 3-16. They're losing games in the Big Ten by an average of 10, 11 points. Like this is so bad. Like this isn't just like down year. We'll see if he can bounce back. Like this is a bad year after what I thought was a really underachieving year last year. Like Mike Woodson, I get it. One more year, but I think his seat should be incredibly hot because I think the expectations need to be higher at Indiana than just eking into NCAA tournaments. Like they should be in contention in the Big Ten. But Michigan, this is just a train wreck of a season. I know his health problems. I know all that, but this is 2 years in a row that this has just been a bad roster building, bad coaching job. So bringing him back, I think would be ridiculous, but he's Juwan Howard and he's at Michigan.
Right. It's the downside, I think, of the alumni hire.
Yep.
I don't know how many times we have to see it for administrations to shy away from it, because look at Patrick Ewing, look at Chris Mullins, you could go on down the line. Even Penny Hardaway is kind of treading water a little bit, even though I think out of the alumni guys that come back, he's he's had a decent amount of success. Now he's not in the high major conference, but yeah, I think there should. I think if a change is made, it's because Juwan decides to go back to the NBA, or maybe it's under like his own volition.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. I wonder what that job would look like. It's why, honestly, it's why I put it in the middle of the pack when we did our jobs, because they've had admissions issues. They've had NIL issues. And that's a big piece of today's day and age, because now you're talking about the portal and on NIL. And if you're not clicking and humming on those fronts, it's just really hard. It's an uphill battle. Now you got to rely on your staff, and you got to be perfect. You got to be near perfect. And the past 2 years, this Michigan program, they don't really have an identity.
Yep.
Right. And I mean, at least for this, look at this Illinois team over the past few years. I mean, their identity, they've obviously had a lot of talent. They've had Kofi, they've had Io, they've had Trent, they've had, Terrence Shannon, they've had Marcus Damask, but they've tried to mold into like, hey, here's kind of our style and how we want to play, and let's be really good at it. And Michigan just honestly kind of looks like they tip the ball and see what happens. And that's not a way to compete in this league. You got to have something that you're really good at and lean into it.
Yeah, I just don't know how you look back at last year's team like that one. Hunter Dickinson and 2 first-round draft picks and don't even make the tournament. It just doesn't compete for me. Mike LaTulip, you are the goods man. Left to do a Big Ten tournament draft next week when we get on here. Maybe get Piper involved on that. See what we think about that. It's one of my favorites, man. It's in Minneapolis this year. I always prefer it in Indy. But
no kidding. As the resident Indy guy here, I would love for it to be it should be Indy and Chicago.
Yeah, and even Chicago, like, listen, I'm an Illinois guy, I root for all the Chicago sports teams, but being in the United Center, like if it was at Wintrust, which isn't big enough for this event, like it might have a better vibe just because it'd be closer to downtown. But Indy, it's just so easy in and out. It just feels like an event there, and Chicago just feels like another thing that's happening.
Well, if you want a good story, I don't think I've told this before. Apologies if I have, but when we played in the Big Ten tournament my sophomore year, we lost, Tracy Abrams right there on a floater against Michigan, like a shot we saw him hit hundreds and hundreds of times, just misses. And, we're bummed, but we're staying at the Marriott downtown Indy, and it's right by Cambridge, or at that point it was Bankers Life.
Yeah.
So we walked to the game. And we walk home from the game, which is interesting. Just the fact that you can do that is cool, because you're like walking past people on the street. And but what was really cool about it was we finished, walk out of the arena, and we're walking down the sidewalk. And I think Cambridge has like almost like a beer deck up top, like up above the street. And you got these Michigan fans and these Indiana fans just dog cussing us on the street, and we got guys yelling back at them. And it was just like, I'm standing there, I'm like, it's pretty cool. Like, it's just cool, because like everybody's all around each other. Whereas in Chicago, it's like I was at the Big Ten tournament last year, and I think we stayed at the Hyatt downtown on the river, and then you got to drive like, it's 10-15 minutes to get over to the United Center. It's not the easiest to get to, and
there's nothing around there.
It's very disconnected. Where like downtown Indy, where you got Cambridge, you got restaurants right there. People are walking around. It feels a lot like an NCAA tournament, where everybody's kind of around the site and there's different teams. And so, yeah, that's my pitch.
Now, I do think Minneapolis is going to have a more similar vibe to Indy, because
Minneapolis is awesome.
Awesome city. Like it's just so far away for a lot of the fan base. And I know the Big Ten's expanding. We'll see if it goes to LA and other places like that. Vegas. I'd be cool with Vegas. I'd rather do Vegas than LA, because I think the fan bases would travel to that.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a destination. Like I had the thought process. I'm like, do I want to go to Minneapolis? And I will say, when we traveled to Minneapolis to play Minnesota, when I was there, it was cool, because we're at the hotel, and the hotel would overlook, like, I don't know, is the baseball stadium Target Field?
Target Field, Target Center.
Target Field, you have the Target Center. Like, everything is kind of right there. And now I don't know what the restaurant scene is around there, but it sounds like it's pretty good. And that always lends itself to a solid overall environment for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah. Mike LaTulip, you're the goods man. We'll catch up next week.
Appreciate you, man.